I'm Blaine Carter. Together, we're going to be exploring the what, why, and how of open source technologies. Welcome back. This is part 2 on how to deploy a backend for your Oracle CodeCard using Oracle REST Data Services on your always free Oracle Cloud database. Now, at the end of the last section, we got up to the point of where we had started defining our Oracle REST Data Services, and we had just finished defining the URI. Now that we've got the full URI defined, we need to set up handlers for the different REST methods such as get, put, post, and delete. We're probably just going to work with get and post for now, but the way you do that is you call ORDS define handler, and you can see here that we're assigning this new handler to the functions module and the master template, and the method that we're going to handle is the get method. So you'll use get when you want to go get data from an API. And in this case, we're actually going to use a PL/SQL block for our get method, and we're going to manually build the JSON object that gets passed back. Most of the time when you're using ORDS and you set up a get, you'll use just a SQL statement, and then ORDS does its magic and takes the output from that and turns it into a JSON object and returns it for you, making it really, really simple. However, what we wanted to do here was when you set your badge up and you push a button, if you haven't previously set up something for that button, we didn't want it to just error out and cause a problem. So what we wanted to do down here, and you can go through all this PL/SQL code, it's fairly standard PL/SQL code, so I'm not going to walk through it line by line. But down here in the exception handling, we set it up so that if there's any problem at all, then we create this JSON object that basically says you have not configured your code card yet. So if you want this to say something different on an error, this is the section where you would go in and change the PL/SQL so you can do whatever you'd like to do. Now, to make all of this work, we do need to have some parameters set up, because you'll notice back up here in the code that we are using some bind variables, because we like to be secure and we like to do that type of stuff properly. So in here we have these bind variables, and what you use the parameters for is you map the bind variables in the PL/SQL to incoming values that are coming in from the REST request. So when your badge, you push the button and it makes a REST call, it will include some header information that will define the code card ID. That's your ID for your code card that you can get by doing the double press. The button itself, so this would be whether it's the A or the B button, and the button function, which is, was it a short press, which will turn out to be a 1, or was it a long press, which will turn out to be a 2. So we need to pass in those 3 pieces of information so that the PL/SQL knows which layout to send back to the badge. And so the way that the defined parameters work, of course, they're all pretty much similar. We're assigning them to the functions master module pattern, to the get method, and here you'll see pname. So pname is the name as it's coming in from outside. So from the code card itself, it's going to have a header that is called xCodeCard button function. Now, you could change that if you wanted to make it something else. Just we thought that looked nice, so that's what that's called there. And so that will come in through the header. It's going to be a string. Here you can see it's coming in through the header as a string. And then this bind variable name, this is going to be mapped to the bind variable in the PL/SQL. So if we go back up here, you will see that we have a button function here. So if you change this name down here, you'll need to change wherever it's used up top so that it matches there. So that's how the parameters are used to map from the incoming header value. There's the key, and it will take that value and map it to the PL/SQL bind variable. But we've got 3 different parameters set up to map for that handler. And so at this point, if you were to run just up to here and then stop, everything above this, that would create the get function that would make it so that your badge, push the button, something happens, and it sends back the layout for your badge. So with the API method set up to get data out, now we want to set up a REST API so that we can get data in. In another video/blog post, I will be walking through how to set up the CodeCard designer in your own always free Oracle Compute instance, and this will be the URI that CodeCard designer consumes, to use all the proper terminology, to basically you set it up on the designer and you'll push it in through this post handler. And so here you can see we're going to define another handler for the functions master. This one's going to be a post. Now the post is pretty much always going to be a PL SQL block. So with ORDS, whenever you're doing something that can mess with your data, so post, put, delete, you're going to use PL SQL. Makes it gives you way more control over what you're doing. Yes, I know you could do everything through SQL, but this makes it easier to have more control and keep things all nice and secure. So we're going to use a PL SQL block for this, and we're going to make sure that the data coming in is going to be JSON data. And once again, I'm not good with comments, so we'll mark that as null. So the PL SQL that we're going to use is, once again, it's fairly standard PL SQL. Some of this stuff is just set up specifically for the CodeCard designer. It sends it in a certain way, so and we like to change things once it comes in, so you can go through and read this to see what it's doing. But once again, we're going to be using some bind variables on the data coming in, and once we've collected everything up and prettied it up, we're going to insert it into that CodeMaker table. And once again, a whole bunch of bind variables here. Now these bind variables, when we get to the parameters section, you'll notice the parameters just have the same 3 parameters that we had before. So one really nice thing about ORDS is when you pass in a JSON object, if the key in the JSON object matches a bind variable in the PL SQL, so we'll be passing in a key that's badge ID. Actually, it's a bad example. Template, yeah. So we'll be passing in a key that's template, and it'll have a value since you can just use a bind variable that matches the key, and ORDS will auto map that for you. The times when we have to set up the parameters are when we're setting stuff in through the header, when things are just a little bit different. So it's pretty standard PL SQL code here, returning the new ID. Once we're done, we're going to create another JSON object to send back to the calling function so that it knows that everything happened. Down here, we're kind of doing an upsert with this. So we're looking at the exception, dupe val on index. And so if the CodeCard ID function and so the button press and the label. So if the ID, label, and function all are already in there, so button A, short press 1, then we'll do an update instead of an insert. So that's really all this is for. And then down here, these 3 parameters I believe are exactly the same as before, except for we're mapping these to the post method. And so if you were to run it up to this point with everything above, you'd have an API for getting data out of the database with the previous handler, and this one allows you to put data into the database with this handler. This last little bit here is optional. If you don't intend to deploy the CodeCard designer onto wherever you want to put it, I'll have no more material that shows you how to put it onto your own Oracle Cloud Compute instance, which is also always free. So if you don't intend to do that, then you don't really have to include this last section. However, it's already included in the full code. You can copy and paste, and there's plenty of room to run it in the always free database, so you might as well. But just going over it real quick, in the functions module, we're going to create a new template called register. So once we do that, the URI for this will look like that. It will end with /register rather than /master. And then we're going to define a post handler, which is also PL/SQL, very similar to what happened up above. In this case, we're going to link the badge ID to whatever you enter in the name field when you log into the CodeCard Designer. It's nullable, so you don't actually have to, but it just makes it a little bit prettier. So just a quick insert statement. There are no parameters for this, so it's just going to do that auto mapping thing I mentioned, where in the JSON statement coming in, it will have badge ID and name, and then it will return this this JSON object. And of course, it's an upsert, so we'll do an update if it already exists. And with that, that's the last little bit of the interface, and we can run that. And you can see down here, PL/SQL procedure successfully compiled, which means our API is in, it is committed, it is up and running. So now we can run a quick test. The quickest and easiest way to test this is with just a quick curl statement. So what we can do is we're going to curl, make it a post. This is the big URI that we created for the database. And here are the headers set. You can get the CodeCard ID by turning it on and doing a quick press and release of the A and B buttons together. That will get you the ID. We're going to set up button A. We're going to set up a short press as a 1, long press as a 2. We're going to tell it that it's JSON. And then this is what the raw JSON object will look like that we're going to post to the new service. So let me open a terminal here, and I will execute that down at the bottom. And there we go. So we got the response back that for this badge ID, we created a new record, and the record ID is 1. Now, of course, the easiest way to test whether this worked or not would be if you had already set up your badge correctly. You could just short press the A button, and it should change over to say, yay, I did it. Here's my code card, and it's running on the Oracle Always Free database. However, if there's any issue with how you set up the code card before in the other two posts, maybe type something in wrong, I don't know. A quick way just to make sure that the ORDS, the REST service, is set up is we can do a curl. We're going to do a get, exact same URI that we used before, and we're going to set those 3 header parameters that we talked about before using the same code card ID, button A, short press. And so when we execute that, it goes out and it brings back this JSON object that we sent up in the post. So with that, we can see that both of the ins and outs are working, the post and the get, for that your code card is going to need for the button presses. And so that's up and working, so your badge should take off at this point. If your badge is not able to get the data back, get the layout back, but the curl works, then that means something in one of those other 2 posts, either the now what post or the remove fingerprint post, something in there didn't get set up just right. So go back and try that again. As always, if you have issues with that, let me know and I will do my best to help you out. But at this point, go out and have fun with it. There are some other things you could do. It is just PL/SQL in the database that's behind what's going on when these buttons are being pressed. So you could create a new table somewhere and maybe change it so that when the A button is short pressed, it will make a new entry in the table saying this button was pressed at this time. Maybe you want to have another table with some query and hit the button and have it run a query and bring the results back from that query and put that in the body text on your badge. There are some size limits to that. The screen is only about that big. Maybe you want to execute a stored procedure that does some sort of maintenance or something on your database, or just check something. There's all kinds of things you can do. You could make a whole different module template get API and switch over so that the buttons, button A uses this REST API and the other one does the other API. All kinds of things you can do. Maybe if you do something fun, leave a note in a comment telling me what you did, and I would really appreciate that because it's always fun to see the new ideas. But anyway, that's how you set up the Oracle REST Data Services module on the back end to work with your Oracle CodeCard. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it and subscribe to my channel. And as always, I appreciate you spending your time with me. Thank you.